The world of the bold and the beautiful has always thrived on the illusion that love, once reclaimed, can erase the scars of the past. When Hope Logan and Liam Spencer find their way back to one another and remarry, the moment feels almost ceremonial, as if the universe itself has granted them a second chance after years of emotional misfires, misunderstandings, and painful separations. Their renewed union carries the promise of stability, of finally choosing each other without hesitation or fear. For a brief period, Hope allows herself to believe that happiness, once so fragile, has finally settled into something solid and enduring. Yet even as the glow of reconciliation surrounds them, reality quietly begins to press in, reminding her that love does not exist in isolation from ambition, responsibility, and unresolved history. At Forrester Creations, the atmosphere is far less forgiving than the warmth of Hope's personal life. The demands of her new project arrive swiftly and relentlessly, pulling her focus away from the emotional sanctuary she hoped marriage would provide. As expectations mount and deadlines tighten, Hope finds herself stretched thin, caught between the identity she has rebuilt as Liam's wife and the professional legacy she is expected to uphold. The pressure is not merely logistical, it is existential. Hope has always wanted to be more than a symbol of optimism or morality within the fashion empire. She wants her work to matter, to reflect growth rather than nostalgia. Yet the weight of proving herself again begins to erode the sense of balance she so carefully tried to restore. It is in this environment of quiet strain that Thomas Forrester steps forward, not abruptly, but with calculated ease. His offer to support Hope on her new project appears, on the surface, entirely professional. He frames his involvement as collaboration, as a shared commitment to excellence. Yet beneath that professionalism lies a subtle choreography of closeness. Thomas understands Hope's rhythms, her moments of doubt, her tendency to internalize pressure rather than release it. He positions himself not as a savior, but as a steady presence, someone who anticipates her needs before she voices them. In doing so, he creates a space where dependence can grow unnoticed, disguised as teamwork and mutual respect. As days pass, the line between professional support and emotional intimacy begins to blur. Thomas's attentiveness fills the gaps left by Hope's increasingly strained connection with Liam. Small disagreements at home, insignificant on their own, accumulate under the weight of exhaustion and unspoken frustration. Liam remains devoted, but his inability to fully grasp the intensity of Hope's professional burden leaves her feeling unseen. The contrast is subtle but powerful. Where Liam offers reassurance rooted in shared history, Thomas provides validation grounded in the present moment. Hope does not consciously seek this contrast, but she feels it nonetheless, and that awareness unsettles her. Thomas, acutely perceptive, recognizes the shift long before Hope does. He senses her loneliness not through dramatic confessions, but through silences, through the way she lingers at her desk after hours, through the hesitation in her voice when she speaks about home. Rather than exploiting these vulnerabilities overtly, Thomas mirrors them with empathy. He listens without judgment, responds without urgency, and creates the illusion of a safe emotional refuge. His concern feels genuine, even noble, and that sincerity makes it all the more dangerous. Hope begins to question her own reactions, wondering whether the comfort she feels is simply gratitude or something far more complicated. The turning point arrives not with a grand declaration, but with quiet inevitability. One late evening at the office, after a day marked by professional setbacks and a personal misunderstanding that leaves Hope emotionally raw, she finds herself unable to return home. The space she once associated with purpose now feels oppressive, amplifying her sense of isolation. In that fragile state, she turns to the one person who has consistently remained present without demanding explanation. Seeking nothing more than understanding, she confides in Thomas, allowing the carefully maintained walls around her emotions to crumble. Thomas responds not with solutions, but with reassurance. His comfort is gentle, deliberate, and deeply personal. He does not minimize her pain or redirect it, he acknowledges it fully, validating feelings Hope has been too afraid to name. In that suspended moment, the world narrows to shared vulnerability, an unspoken connection. The kiss that follows is not planned, nor is it entirely accidental. It emerges from accumulated tension, from longing misinterpreted as safety, from boundaries eroded by proximity and trust. When it happens, it is brief but seismic, awakening emotions Hope believed she had buried long ago. The aftermath is immediate and unforgiving. Hope pulls away, overwhelmed by guilt and confusion. The kiss reverberates through her conscience, colliding with her commitment to Liam and her identity as someone who values honesty above all else. Yet alongside the guilt exists an undeniable pull toward the understanding Thomas offered, a connection that felt instinctive and deeply attuned to her emotional state. Hope is left grappling with a dual reality, one in which she has betrayed the man she loves, and another in which she has glimpsed a version of herself that feels profoundly seen. In the days that follow, Hope becomes a study in restraint. She buries herself in work, avoids intimacy, and convinces herself that silence can undo what has already occurred. Yet her thoughts betray her resolve. The meaning of the kiss refuses to fade, resurfacing in moments of quiet reflection and emotional fatigue. She tells herself it was a mistake born of stress, yet the intensity of her reaction suggests otherwise. The more she tries to suppress it, the more it reveals itself as a symptom of deeper dissatisfaction she has yet to confront. Liam, perceptive in his own way, begins to notice the change. Hope's distance, her distracted demeanor, and her guarded responses raise questions he cannot ignore. His concern is not accusatory, but it is persistent. He senses that something has shifted within their marriage, something fragile and unresolved. The source of his unease increasingly points toward Thomas, whose proximity to Hope has become impossible to overlook. For Liam, the situation reopens old wounds, reminding him of past rivalries and betrayals he believed they had overcome. As suspicion grows, Hope finds herself standing at a crossroads that demands honesty she is not yet ready to offer. One path leads toward reaffirming her marriage, confronting her mistake, and rebuilding trust through painful transparency. The other tempts her with emotional exploration, with the possibility that her connection to Thomas represents an unmet need rather than a fleeting lapse. Neither choice is free of consequence. Each demands sacrifice, courage, and the willingness to dismantle the illusion that love alone can shield one from moral complexity. Hope's internal battle becomes the true heart of the conflict. She is no longer choosing between two men, but between two versions of herself, the woman who fought tirelessly for stability, and the woman who longs for emotional attunement without compromise. The decision she faces is not defined by desire alone, but by identity, integrity, and the cost of truth. As the tension continues to build, one thing becomes clear: the kiss was not the end of the story, but its beginning. And in the world of the bold and the beautiful, beginnings are often far more dangerous than endings. The emotional undercurrent running through The Bold and the Beautiful on Tuesday, January 20th, is not defined by a single explosive moment, but by a series of quiet tensions that slowly tighten until every character involved feels the strain. This episode unfolds like a warning disguised as ordinary conversation, where concern is mistaken for interference, affection is shadowed by rivalry, and love becomes entangled with fear. At the center of this emotional web are people who believe they are acting out of protection or honesty, yet are unknowingly pushing one another toward confrontation. What emerges is not simply drama, but a study of how unresolved histories and unspoken anxieties can shape the present in destructive ways. At Forrester Creations, the gallery becomes more than a professional space. It turns into a crossroads where curiosity, attraction, and insecurity intersect. R.J. Forrester approaches Electra Forrester with an openness that initially feels sincere and unthreatening. His interest in her is framed as a desire to understand, to learn who she is beyond surface impressions. Yet beneath that curiosity lies something more complicated. R.J. is not merely getting to know Electra, he is measuring her, evaluating her emotional landscape, and trying to determine whether she fits into a version of stability he himself is seeking. His questions, while seemingly harmless, are shaped by his own uncertainty and by the legacy of conflict he has inherited as Ridge Forrester's son. As the conversation deepens, the subject of Will Spencer inevitably surfaces, and with it the unresolved shadow of Luna Nozawa. The mention of Luna is not incidental. It is a reminder that Electra's past is not cleanly separated from her present, that her emotional growth was forged through turmoil rather than ease. R.J.'s reaction reveals more about himself than about Electra. He is not simply curious about her relationship with Will, he is unsettled by the idea that someone else may already occupy a space he has only just begun to imagine for himself. Luna's history becomes a convenient lens through which R.J. questions Electra's emotional clarity, subtly implying that her current happiness might be provisional, or borrowed rather than fully her own. What R.J. does not realize is that Will Spencer is close enough to hear fragments of this conversation, close enough to sense the shift in tone and intention. Will's presence, though unseen, transforms the emotional stakes. He listens not out of insecurity alone, but out of a growing awareness that his relationship with Electra is being quietly tested by someone who represents both romantic competition and long-standing familial rivalry. Will's history as Bill Spencer's son has conditioned him to expect conflict, particularly where the Forrester family is concerned. This moment confirms his suspicion that even personal relationships cannot escape the gravitational pull of legacy battles. When Electra reflects on her past with Luna, she does not do so defensively. Instead, her acknowledgement carries the weight of survival. She recognizes that what she endured was painful, destabilizing, and formative. Rather than diminishing her, those experiences clarified her sense of self and sharpened her understanding of what she needs from love. Will's role in that transformation is not framed as rescue, but as support, steady, grounding, and consistent. Through him, she learned that strength does not always come from standing alone, but from choosing someone who respects your resilience rather than exploiting your vulnerability. This realization, however, only intensifies R.J.'s internal conflict. He begins to wonder whether Electra's strength has made her inaccessible to someone like him, someone who is still navigating his own emotional terrain. R.J.'s unspoken question is whether Electra would be happier with a simpler life, one untouched by Luna's shadow, or by Will's complicated family ties. Yet this question is less about Electra's happiness and more about R.J.'s desire for emotional safety. He is drawn to her, but unsure whether he is prepared for the complexity she represents. Before the conversation can move toward any resolution, Will steps forward, making his presence unmistakably known. His interruption is not subtle. It is deliberate, theatrical, and designed to assert clarity where ambiguity has begun to form. Will does not confront R.J. with hostility, but with certainty. His physical closeness to Electra, whether through a protective gesture or a public display of affection, serves as a declaration that their relationship is real, established, and not open to quiet reinterpretation. It is a message aimed as much at R.J. as it is at himself, reinforcing his place in Electra's life. The resulting tension between Will and R.J. is not explosive, but it is unmistakable. Their exchange carries an undercurrent of rivalry that extends far beyond Electra herself. As the sons of Bill Spencer and Ridge Forrester, they are inheritors of a feud that has shaped the emotional architecture of their families for decades. What begins as subtle jabs and restrained sarcasm threatens to evolve into something more entrenched. Elektra becomes the unintended focal point of this rivalry, a symbol of what each man desires and fears losing. While this rivalry simmers at Forrester Creations, a different kind of urgency unfolds elsewhere. Steffy Forrester Finnegan is consumed by a sense of impending disaster, one that stems not from romantic rivalry, but from moral alarm. Her concern centers on the growing connection between Taylor Hayes and Deacon Sharp, a relationship that Steffy views as dangerously naive given Deacon's marital ties to Sheila Sharp. For Steffy, this is not a matter of personal judgment, but of pattern recognition. She has seen too many lives disrupted by underestimating Sheila's capacity for destruction. Steffy's decision to warn Hope Logan Spencer is driven by both pragmatism and emotional exhaustion. She understands that Hope occupies a unique position in this situation, one that allows her to influence Deacon in ways Steffy cannot. Their conversation is framed as strategic, but beneath it lies a plea for shared responsibility. Steffy is acutely aware that if Taylor continues down this path, the consequences will not be contained to one relationship. They will ripple outward, affecting families, careers, and emotional stability. In articulating her fears, Steffy emphasizes the inherent danger of Deacon's proximity to Taylor while Sheila remains part of his life. Sheila's history of obsession and violence is not abstract. It is a lived reality that has already inflicted profound trauma. Steffy's insistence that Hope intervene is born from a desire to prevent history from repeating itself. She does not want to be proven right after the damage is done. She wants to be heard before it is too late. Hope, faced with Steffy's urgency, is torn between loyalty and conscience. Her relationship with Deacon is fraught with complexity, shaped by disappointment, forgiveness, and unresolved longing for stability. Yet Hope cannot ignore the logic of Steffy's warning. The possibility that Taylor could become collateral damage in Sheila's orbit forces Hope to confront the limits of neutrality. Ultimately, she chooses to act, visiting Deacon's home not as a daughter seeking reassurance, but as a woman demanding accountability. Simultaneously, Steffy takes it upon herself to confront Taylor directly. Her visit to Taylor's office is not an act of defiance but of desperation. Steffy speaks from a place of lived experience, reminding Taylor that emotional boundaries are not optional when dealing with someone like Deacon. Taylor's belief that she can manage the situation through compassion and reason is, in Steffy's eyes, a dangerous illusion. What Steffy fears most is not Taylor's judgment, but her optimism. The episode closes not with resolution, but with foreboding. The connections between Deacon and Taylor are clearly leading toward unsettling developments, and the fractures forming between Will and RJ suggest that personal rivalries are about to intensify. Each character believes they are acting out of love, protection, or honesty, yet the paths they are choosing are converging toward conflict. What makes the situation so compelling is not the certainty of disaster, but the haunting possibility that it could still be avoided, if only the right words are spoken, if only the warnings are taken seriously. In this way, The Bold and the Beautiful continues to explore its most enduring theme, that danger often arrives not with violence or chaos, but with familiarity and trust. Relationships unravel not because of malice, but because of blind spots. And as these characters move forward, convinced of their intentions, the audience is left with the unsettling awareness that the most devastating consequences are often born from moments that felt, at the time, entirely reasonable.